I call it career strategy because that's what it is, and there's no perfect role for anyone. I've pieced together something that includes clinical medicine. Some of my clients do the same. Some just need to change their hospital or clinic or setting. Some just need a new job. But there's a big mix of what's right for each person, and that's what the purpose of my program is.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com. Because you're not in this alone. In this episode, I'll be speaking with an emergency medicine physician who felt something was missing from his career and clinical practice. We'll hear how he found what he was looking for in medical management as well as coaching and podcasting. So let's hear my conversation with Dr. Andrew Tisser. What a great pleasure it is for me to be in conversation today with a fellow podcaster, Dr. Andrew Tisser, from up in Western New York. Andrew, it's great to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Randy. It's a real treat.
I'm really looking forward to the conversation, but as always, we want to know all the details about your professional development, and I'm always interested in when you decided that medical school was going to be right for you. I notice, I think you got your undergraduate degree was in psychology, if I'm correct, and then there might have been a little time between when you finished your baccalaureate degree and when you started a medical school. So what's the story there?
Yeah, thank you. So, I attended college in Western New York as well at State University in New York, college at Geneseo. It's a small little rural college south of Rochester, New York. I pursued study in psychology and graduated. Then the plan in the beginning was to just figure out what the plan was. So I volunteered for the fire department as a firefighter and EMT throughout college. And that was kind of my introduction to medicine. And what spurred me to pursue a medical degree is I wanted to know kind of what happened to the patients after we dropped them off.
Well, now, just a minute. So you embarked on an undergraduate degree in psychology, and immediately after getting out of college, you start running into burning buildings and responding to emergencies. Is there something in particular that led you in that direction?
Well, I actually, during college, I started probably at the end of my freshman year working for our little emergency response squad because I thought it was interesting. And that little response squad, wasn't enough. So I joined the local fire department and that, that was great fun. I really enjoyed my time with the fire department. But yeah, it was kind of spur of the moment. This kind of seems interesting, and that's what I'll do.
And so that kind of piqued your interest in what happens to people after the ambulance ride is over and they disappear into the hospital.
Exactly right.
And the next thing that happened, so you decided that you wanted to go to medical school, and you picked osteopathy as opposed to the, shall we say, more traditional MD route. Was there some thought mechanism behind how you made that choice?
Yeah, there's a real practical decision. I applied to both, and I only got into DO schools.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's practical enough.
Yeah, I didn't see a major difference. I know there's some philosophical differences in the
Sure.
practice, but I applied to both, and that's where I got in, and I took my acceptance and went on.
And then while you were in medical school, did you feel like, yeah, I did the right thing. I'm in the right place now?
It brings up a lot of questions. I think I was actually feeling a lot of dissatisfaction early in my second year of medical school, with maybe some disillusionment as to what the career was. I don't come from any doctors in my family, and my experience with physicians was pretty much in the emergency department.
Mm-hmm.
And, this seems pretty cool. I get to help people, get to know a lot of things. It's a pretty good job. But faced with the realities of medicine, like we had some early clinical experiences in my second year. I was starting to become a little more jaded as to what the career entailed.
And can you talk about that some more? Where did that jadedness, where do you think that came from?
Well, I think I just didn't really enjoy the subject matter as much as I thought it would. It wasn't interesting to me. And a lot of my professors just said it was, preclinical work and it would just get better. Mm-hmm. And I went out there and just started talking to doctors at that point. I'm already a second year med student and they're all pretty unhappy. And so faced with some of those realities, I was just starting to really get pretty dissatisfied. And unfortunately, in my mind, I was too indebted to stop.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's, but again, everyone's just like, well, it's preclinical, it's not that interesting. It'll get better,
Well, now you bring up something else that's interesting. You did what I would have considered to be exactly the right thing. You're in basic sciences. It is, to say the least, challenging, and I think most people would probably agree in many ways boring. So you decided to go out and talk to some people that were already in active practice, and what you found was that they didn't really make it sound like it was going to get particularly better. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're right. That's really what I found, and I didn't find the actual material all that challenging. Not to
Sure.
That sounds kind of strange, but the actual coursework wasn't challenging. It just was boring. But again, if it gets better, it gets better. But I didn't find that to be true.
Well, that is an interesting part of the story. Well, actually, now tell me, when and under what circumstances did you come to the decision that it was going to be emergency medicine for you?
Well, I started my clinical years hoping again that it would be better, and I found it once again not to be the case. But I started, I made a list of all the specialties, and I started my clinical rotations, and I didn't really like any of it. I'll be completely honest with you. No field really spoke to me. I was most familiar with emergency medicine because of my background, and on paper it seemed good, make a good salary. They said back in the day, people said it was a lifestyle specialty, which it is not a lifestyle specialty. But you do have a lot of time off. You make a pretty good salary. You keep work at work. That seemed pretty good on paper to me.
Yeah. And so a lifestyle specialty, meaning that you have more control over your time. You work when you work, you're off when you're off. Is that the idea?
Yeah. I mean, there's the traditional lifestyle specialties of like dermatology and ophthalmology and radiology, right? But emergency medicine, it was lumped in with that. But in fact, you have a lot of days off, but a lot of the days you work are nights and weekends and holidays,
Right. So once you got into your emergency medicine residency, your postgraduate training, same kind of experience? This is not ringing my bell, or were you feeling any better about it?
No, I was pretty miserable in residency, and there was a lot of factors involved. My wife and I ended up matching 2 hours apart, so I would often just drive back and forth, which wasn't, that wasn't too cool. But the actual medicine, again, it's, I've spoken about this before on different platforms, but the medicine wasn't very difficult. Like I was a good ER doctor throughout, and I just found it so boring. I just didn't feel like I was helping anyone. But the faculty members were just like, "Oh, well, you're a resident. It's supposed to suck. It'll get better." right? So, which seems to be the theme along the way, is that it'll get better, it'll get better.
That sounds to me like a very unusual way to try to be encouraging, but nonetheless, that's what you got. And as I understand it, I think I have the timeline correctly. Once you were finished with your residency, was that the point that you and your wife both moved to Chicago?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
She went on to do a fellowship, and I followed her out there.
In rheumatology, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And is she still practicing?
She is. She took the academic route, so she's actually the program director for internal medicine, and clinically, she works a day and a half a week seeing rheumatology patients. And
my impression from looking over your CV is during that time when she was training, that you used that opportunity to learn a little bit about the different ways that you can experience clinical medicine. You want to tell us about that?
I figured it was a good experimental time. We were only going to be there for 2 years. And so I took a lot of different jobs, part-time, locums. And I worked in really tiny little critical access hospitals all the way up to massive academic centers, just to see, like, where do I fit into this puzzle? Because what I was doing in residency certainly wasn't it. So I tried pretty much everything as far as a clinical setting, and wasn't too happy.
So once your wife was finished with her residency and you decided to go back to New York, did you have any idea what you were going to do at that point? Made any plans?
Yeah. So near maybe the second half of our time in Chicago, I was really miserable. And I started like this quest to find something frankly, to find my escape from clinical medicine. And my wife hates this thinking about these times, because we joke, like, on Monday I would do a Medi-Spa, and on Tuesday I would do insurance medicine, and on Wednesday I would join the pharmaceutical industry. Any of these big jobs that could just, but the problem is, you're $500,000 in debt, so you need something that can replace your salary.
Right.
And I had no real direction, so it was really straining our relationship. It was straining, my time outside of work. And my wife was just like, why don't you just figure it out, take some time, and then when we move back home, then you can put the plan into action. And that's kind of what I did.
And what was the plan?
Well, I did some work, some soul searching. I worked on I did a lot of personal development work. I started talking with some of my mentors, some coaches myself, and decided that I had a real interest in administrative medicine on the one hand, which I had done some electives in residency I really enjoyed, in addition to some of these other things, side businesses that I had worked on. So my idea was to try and find a job at a small, tiny little hospital where clinically it wasn't very burdensome, and I would have time to explore some of my other interests. And so that's kind of what I did.
And so tell us what that looks like, and I really am dying to know. Have you found your sweet spot? Are you happy with where you are at this point?
Well, I'm happy to say, Randy, yes, I'm very happy nowadays.
Oh, fabulous!
But I've hodgepodge together a career, and so the quick of it is we moved back home to Buffalo, New York. I took a staff position in an ER that was really a nice ER, well run, good company. Quickly assumed a medical directorship for an urgent care locally there. Started my podcast, started my career strategy business, I was doing some chart review work. So I've really bought down my time quite a bit. And the biggest update is that as of August 1st, I have switched hospitals, and I'm now taking full ER director role. So that's moving up forward in my administrative pursuits. So nowadays I'm about 50% clinical.
And this new role, you've been at it for how long?
Just over a month and a half. August 1st I started.
And how's it going?
It's great. It brings with it plenty of new challenges, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. So, what I think I hear you saying is that you really feel that there is some place for you and some sense of belonging in clinical medicine, but you just simply don't want that to be all there is.
Exactly. I offset the boredom that I feel in day-to-day medicine with all the other things, and it brings a lot more enjoyment to the clinical work for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's great. That's fabulous. So, well, give us some details about the other things, if you will. I know there's not just the administrative role that you just described, but there is a lot of other stuff going on, the podcast and the blog and the coaching. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So the podcast was the first thing. I started January of 2020. And initially that was an effort to talk to the different players in healthcare about communication within healthcare, which it's another thing I really enjoy talking about. That got a little stale after a while because people just kind of say the same thing. You know, everyone has a voice, everyone's part of the team, and I agree. But it was a great first season, and then I pivoted to things that I've been really more interested in lately, which is just the specific needs of the early career physician, and that's where I've been ever since, working on episode 86 this week.
And I'm interested to know if, in the process of coaching, you actually find some physicians that you really help to become satisfied with their clinical role, and maybe others you actually encourage to think about either getting into non-clinical roles or getting out of medicine altogether. Is there a mix of that, or what is it like? Yeah,
there's a big mix, and I call it career strategy because that's what it is, you know, and there's no perfect role for anyone. You know, I've pieced together something that includes clinical medicine. Some of my clients do the same. Some just need to change their hospital or clinic or setting. Some just need a new job. But there's a big mix of what's right for each person, and that's what the purpose of my program is.
In your capacity as an administrative person, do you think that you have had opportunities, and if so, I'd like to hear about those opportunities where you've managed to make life better for the physicians?
Well, That's my goal, right? I think in the current role, it's a little too early to see. But
Yeah.
my first job, I felt was making the schedule a little more equitable, because I've been on the wrong end of that previously, and I think that goes a long way. To
A
show
lot
you
revolves
care.
around the schedule, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. So that, but I think some of the other projects that I'm working on with my team now will better the lives of the physicians and
Yeah.
the APPs we work with as well.
How do you feel that you're being perceived by your physician and counterparts as the administrative person that they have to answer to and look to for answers to their gripes? How are you being received in that crowd?
So far, I think well. I think I was a little nervous, because I'm kind of
I
the
can't
new
imagine.
person on the block here, and
Yeah.
I'm young, which sometimes is negatively seen. But so far, everybody's been very kind and accepting, and so far, so good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that specifically about the fact that you are relatively young, and if you from time to time run into more seasoned physicians who don't quite want to hear what you have to say. Does that happen from time to time?
I mean, I think here and again, not currently, at least not yet. But I think I've run into in the past. I think
Yeah.
you see people. Well, what do you know? You've only been doing this a few years. Well, actually,
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah. And in terms of your long-term strategy, do you think on the not too far distant horizon, do you see getting out of clinical medicine altogether, or would you like to make it work for another 20, 25 years? What do you think?
Well, I think I'd like to keep my toe dipped in clinical medicine. I think working, 5 shifts a month or 8 shifts a month versus 3 or 4 shifts a month, I don't know that there's a lot of difference when it comes to administrative work. I think to be an effective physician administrator, you need to at least see some patients and be back there with the troops, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a lot easier, I would imagine, to get some credibility from the people you're supervising if you can say, look, I've stood where you've stood. So hats off to you for making that decision. Well, Andrew, that's a really interesting story, and it sounds to me as if you're sort of in the middle of it, and only time will tell where it goes. You've clearly shown that you're willing to pivot and take another tack from time to time, and congratulations on having the courage to do that. And along those lines, if I may ask, is your spouse still a little nervous about what you're going to do next, or has she kind of gotten used to it?
Well, she knows I'm always doing something, but I think before I start telling her what I'm going to do next, I think we have a little bit of time to settle in. But yeah, certainly our relationship is so much improved just by my work life being improved and not constantly thinking about how I'm going to get out of this. What am I going to do? I can't do this forever.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Well, Andrew, I've really enjoyed hearing your story, and what I want to do at this point is exactly bring us back to the title of the podcast, and that's when we get some advice from you. So I'm going to close my mic for just a few minutes, and Dr. Andrew Tisser is going to give us his personal prescriptions for success.
Thank you, Randy. I really gave this one a lot of thought. My advice is 5-fold, and this isn't ranked in order of importance. It's just how it came to mind. So, number 1, it's my opinion that you should not just let your career happen to you, and rather you should design it. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes physicians have a very linear path, right? College to med school to residency to maybe fellowship to job. And there's often a sense of, is this it? Is that all? There's nothing else after completing residency? I have to do this for 40 years? Certainly a lot of career dissatisfaction comes from this sentiment. And my point is, if you have short and long-term goals, you have a vision, you know what you want your life to look like, then you can design your career around that, and anything is really possible. Once we stop thinking so linearly and start thinking outside the box, you'd be amazed at the endless possibilities for your career and your life. The second thing is that relationships are everything. When it comes to networking, and I hate that term networking, but in any relationship in general, the important thing is that you're not looking for what can I get out of this person or this relationship. It's important to take genuine interest in other people. Talk to everybody. I always end my podcast by saying, keep talking, because people are inherently interesting and have so much to teach you. The third thing is that you're never too young to be unhappy, dissatisfied, or burnt out. Throughout my career, I was always told, like we discussed, it would get better. It would get better. I was too young to feel burnt out. However, this is flawed thinking. The current generation of physicians has a totally different set of circumstances than their predecessors. And if you are unhappy, then you should find a way to make yourself happy, because no one's going to come down from the heavens and hand it to you. The fourth thing is to learn your values. This is pretty much as hokey and as weird as I get, right? But if you're in a job or a position that is disparate from your values, you're never going to be happy, whether this is clinical, non-clinical, whatever, right? If someone's asking you to do something that is inherently against your values, you'll never be happy. And the last thing is that this is a job. And so many physicians have this job wrapped up as part of their identity. When people ask you to describe yourself, what comes out first? I'm a doctor, or is it I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an avid bird watcher, I'm a lizard spotter, whatever it is, right? This especially comes up with clients when they're trying to transition out of medicine or build a profitable side gig and feel that maybe they're losing their identity as a doctor. But the fact of the matter is, you're just adding another piece to your identity. The doctor part will always be there, but at the end of the day, this is a job, and in a job, you should be happy. And those are my prescriptions for success.
Well, that sounds like really good advice, Andrew, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and share your thoughts with us. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners about at least a few of the many things that you can do. We hardly talked at all about your podcast, but that and websites and email addresses and anything else that you'd like to share, please give it a go.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. So everything is really housed at my website, which is andrewtisserdo.com, TISSER. The podcast is called Talk2MeDoc. That's talk, the number 2, me, DOC. And again, focuses on issues relating to the early career physician, but really any healthcare professional can benefit a lot from listening to that. You can find me most actively on social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter is kind of for my own personal ramblings and enjoyment, and LinkedIn for a lot of the career strategy work. But I'm also on Instagram. I used to be on Facebook, but I got hacked recently. So that's been a challenge. So yeah, those are places to find me. You can send me an email at any time, Andrew@Talk2MeDocPod.com, and I'll give you all that for the show notes for the listeners. That's really it. That's where I can be found.
Well, I bet we'll have a lot of people that hear this podcast that will be seeking you out. And once again, Dr. Andrew Tisser, thanks for being with us on Prescription for Success.
Thanks so much, Randy.
Thank you so much for listening today. Remember, you can get more information about our guests as well as hear them face my rapid-fire questions at our Patreon site. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, and hopefully offer suggestions on what you'd like to hear in future episodes. Thanks very much to Ryan Jones, who composed and performs our theme music. That's all we have for now, so be sure and fill your prescription for success with my next episode.